The 2019 live-action Lion King movie is opening to rather negative reviews. Are critics being fair, or are they blinded by nostalgia? Let's find out and take a look at reviews for both the 2019 and the original 1994 film, The Lion King. I thought it would be interesting to compare, since a lot of these reviewers were there, or at least the publications were there when the original came out, how that affects them. How do they view the original when that was fresh, when there was no nostalgia to blind them with that? So I'm going to do side-by-side reviews. So our first review comes from the New York Times. The Lion King Review, The Art of Herding Digital Cats by A.O. Scott. Beyonce, Donald Glover, and Seth Rogen are some of the famous voices in a super realistic version of the Disney and Broadway favorite. It seems like it's negative, but they're trying to mask it because it's saying it's herding cats, right? That's not a good thing to do. But then you're listing all these famous voice actors and saying how great they are. I mean, it's CGI, obviously. It would have been nice if they had actual, was it lions or tigers or whatever they are, in the film. Just get some handlers and throw them in there, throw some meat around everywhere. But they didn't do that. They went CGI, which for me, like, I don't know. I really wasn't interested to see this remake to begin with. And that's my real question. So before I even dive into this New York Times review, that's my real question. Who is this film for? Because, so my generation grew up with it, right? We grew up with the hand-drawn style. We all loved it. We all, you know, Timon and Pumbaa, all that stuff. But I don't know, are the younger kids liking the CGI movies? Is that why they keep making them? That's what I'm not sure. And if it's not made for them, if it's supposed to be made for my generation, I mean, we grew up with the hand-drawn one, so that's a huge level to reach. So I'm really not sure who this movie's for. 6 months were devoted to teaching Chi-Chi the chimpanzee how to cook bacon and eggs, Dunn wrote, referring to the character in Dr. Dolittle, one of many real animals cast in the big-budget film. I think the reviewer already assumes we know the story of The Lion King, right? Because instead of actually telling us a background of the story itself, he goes into another movie and how they use real animals and how The Lion King is using CGI. So the reviewer is assuming that I've already seen the film. Normally, I would dock a reviewer for doing that, because you should just start off with telling me what the film's about, is it good or not. Like, that's why I'm reading your review. But that's what Disney seems to be doing. They seem to be trying to target us. They seem to be trying to target the people who already know the Lion King story but just want to see it with a fresh coat of paint, right? So I can't really dock him for that. But at the same time, I disagree with him. So if a movie can be judged solely on technique, The Lion King might qualify as a great one. And it kind of wants to be judged that way, for its technical skin rather than its dramatic soul. All he said so far is, he summed it up in that one sentence: it has no soul. It looks nice, but it has no soul. And that's what he's been saying for the past 4 or 5 paragraphs. The closer the movie gets to nature in its look, the more blatant, intrusive, and purposeless its artifice seems. Or else someone could have spent a few months teaching the digital Pumbaa to whip up a nice tofu scramble. What kind of review is that? That's it? It just ends like that? It doesn't say if the movie's good or not. It literally just says it's very technically good, but it lacks the soul. So is it worth seeing or not? Like, that's a terrible review. He said the exact same thing throughout the entire review. He didn't say anything new. And then he ends it like that? Like, that's... Like, I'd be pissed off. I'm like, I spent 5 minutes reading that, and like, if I knew nothing about the film, and I had $20, and I was like, should I see this film or not? His response is essentially, well, it looks great, it's amazing, but it doesn't have a soul. So is that a yes or a no? Like, I don't know. Like, what the hell does that mean? And you don't even go into the story of The Lion King. This is such a terrible review. Oh man, this 2019 review goes in the garbage. Like, that is terrible. A.O. Scott. I mean, that's like, he wrote it like as if it's an introduction to something. It's like, it's starting to build up to like the chunk of his review, but no. That was terrible. That was a terrible review. Let's see how the 1994 review came out. The New York Times. So I have to create an account for the New York Times to read their old 1994 review, but their new review that was terrible, no, they put that out there for free. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Review, film, The Hero Within, The Child Within by Janet Maslin. It's about Simba, a cub who endures certain rites of passage before becoming ruler of his kingdom, describing the classic hero's journey in baby Joseph Campbell fashion. The screenplay adds a touch of Shakespeare for good measure. So I guess maybe there's just a trend with New York Times. They had a pretty terrible intro. I thought it was going to be good, but the first 3 paragraphs are filler. But at least this review includes a good summary, very like 3,000-foot view of what the film is about. But at least you get that, because no one's seen this film before. Like I said, it's original. This tale, with its emphasis on myth-making and machismo, has no heroine, unlike its immediate predecessors. Oh, so they were dealing with that crap back then too? So it has to have a heroine? Like, all the films before were all female leads, and like now Disney's taking it up the butt because they had a male lead? That's so insane. Later on, straying from his own life of privilege, the golden boy Simba is waylaid by 3 hoodlum hyenas in a burned out region that is the story's version of an inner city. Sometimes the derivativeness is just plain irritating, as with the cute Lil Ting, I Just Can't Wait to Be King, which sounds as if Michael Jackson were singing Under the Sea. Pop music doesn't get any safer than that. New York Times hated it. They couldn't stand that it was a kid's film. That's what this review, so I don't understand. I really don't know what this person was expecting. It's clearly made for kids. It's a G movie. It has some intense scenes, as the author points out, but then it's like, oh, it's so derivative. Oh, the songs are so safe. What do you expect? Like, I don't understand in 1994 what they expect it being so safe. And that little jab about like that Simba's entering the inner city. This person's dealing with a lot, or was dealing with a lot of problems. Hopefully they're not dealing with anymore. Wow, terrible review. Better than the 2019 version, but it's really bad. Really, really bad review. So 2 bad reviews for the New York Times. Looks like they were horrible back then. They're horrible now. Let's see if we can cleanse this palate a little bit. Before I get into the next review, I did want to take a few moments to thank everyone for all the amazing, wonderful comments I've received since I've been back. It really, really means a lot to me. It helps keep me going, because sometimes, you know, doing this day in, day out, you kind of get worn down by the grind. But like those comments, they mean a lot. They really do mean a lot. I'm glad I'm getting those. I know I took a little bit of a break, but it's so good to be back. And thank you all again for the heartfelt comments. Already a +1.
And in case you somehow do not know the plot of this movie, Simba gets his right to the throne of Pride Rock challenged when his evil uncle Scar causes tragedy to occur and banishes Simba from the Pride Lands.
Finally, a review that starts off with a background of the film itself. Already +1 in my book.
This reminds me of when Gus Van Sant made Psycho.
Exactly, that's exactly what I thought of when I was reading these reviews and when I saw the trailer. It's just like the shot-for-shot Gus Van Sant film, right? Like Psycho. Like, it's literally shot-for-shot. Why would you watch that compared to the original? And it suffered from the same problems. It captured everything except the important part, like the soul of the film. And that's why I've kind of stayed away from The Lion King.
What's the point of doing it again if you're not going to add your own spin on it? And that's exactly how I feel about Disney's live-action Lion King remake. Because it's essentially the same movie.
So Chris Stuckman, the rest of his review is really good. I really recommend you watch it. I don't want to give away too much here, but I completely agree with him. It just seems like a soulless movie. And it doesn't, like, I don't understand why they made it either. The only real negative I'm going to give Stuckman here is he uses the ABC scale. I'm always in favor of the 5-point scale. He gives it a C, which sounds about right. Like, I think just looking at that, I think that's what I would give that film. And I'm really not sold to go see it. Like, no one's really sold me to go see it right now. So at least that review goes in the good pile. The Lion King by Roger Ebert. It gets +5 because I don't have to sign up for some weird account to read the review, unlike the New York Times. My generation grew up mourning the death of Bambi's mother. Now comes the Lion King with the death of Mufasa, the father of the lion cub who will someday be king. The Disney animators know that cute little cartoon characters are not sufficient to manufacture dreams. There have to be dark corners, frightening moments, and ancient archetypes like the crime of regicide. Whoa, now that's how you do an intro. Granted, he spoiled a big part, but I mean, that comes in early on in the movie. You know, I remember when I saw it fresh, I did not expect it, and that really threw me off. But I assume parents are reading this, so I think they would want to know if they want their children to see that. So I think that's good overall. But that's how you do it. Like, this is a review, and I didn't plan this. I just picked another 94 review. So Roger Ebert, well done. Great way to start it. The Disney animators know that cute little cartoon characters are not sufficient to manufacture dreams. It seems like that's something that Disney has lost. It's very interesting that this review here highlights that in 1994, that this is what Disney knew to be truth. And now in 2019, poof, completely forgot about that. The early Disney's cartoons were, of course, painstakingly animated by hand. There's been a lot of talk recently about computerized animation, as if a computer program could somehow create a movie. Not so. Oh man, I'm getting goosebumps just from that quote. It's the foreshadowing, right? It's like, you know, computers can't make a movie. And Disney proved him right, it seems. Based on all these reviews, literally the computer made these beautiful shots, but gave it no soul, gave it no heart, right? You just put in the data in the computer, it churned something out, but it didn't churn out anything artistic, right? Like, visually and technically, yes, but beyond that, no. And it's interesting that Ebert mentions that computers can't create a movie. Although the movie may be frightening and depressing to the very young, I think it's positive that The Lion King deals with real issues. By processing life's realities and stories, children can prepare themselves for more difficult lessons later on. Great review. Like, this review was amazing, and he gives it, and he uses the 5-point scale. He gives it, I don't know if he uses a 4 or 5 point, but he uses one of those, which is great. So this is how you do a review. You know what the movie's about. You know the technical aspects. You know what to expect, what it's based on, and you're excited to go see it, right? Like, this is a well-done review out of all the reviews I saw, and I just find it eerie that the comparisons that he makes when he starts talking about computer animation and how, like, Disney understands that that's not really what makes a film, and how Disney has kind of lost its way. Man, that really did give me goosebumps. So this review definitely goes in the good pile. It's a shining example of what a review should be. So what have we learned today about the Lion King reviews? Don't trust the New York Times when it comes to movie reviews. They almost never talk about the movie itself, whether it was in 1994 or nowadays. They just kind of go into these weird tangents, or they just say one thing over and over and over and over and over again, and don't let you know anything about the movie itself. They don't let you know if it's good or bad, what's really happening in the film itself. They get off on these weird tangents, so don't trust them. It is apparently a soulless husk of a film. It's very beautiful, but there's nothing inside. Start your review with a summary of the movie itself, especially if it's a remake, because you can't assume that your entire audience has seen everything like that, right? If you've never seen this film and you just want to, like, get into it, and the reviewer just starts going off about all these random things you know nothing about, that's not going to help you at all. So start off with a review itself. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm not going to go see it, so I don't know if you should see it. Well, but then again, it's going to look really nice on a big screen, right? So, I don't know. Maybe I'll sneak into it after I see something else.